right, everybody. So at this moment, I'm going to turn from host to presenter. And you really, on the back of what some of the things that Tomasz had said, to share with you a little bit of insight into the concept of founder-led sales, and in particular, hopefully whet your appetite for potentially checking out the book that I've recently released and is actually available for sale downstairs by the stairs. My quick question for those of you out in the audience: how many of you really embrace your product, love your technology, but really have that deep, uncomfortable sense in your stomach when you have to talk about sales? Okay. There's a couple of people in the audience. How many of you have stayed up at nights wondering, how in the hell am I going to get enough customers to pay to build the business that I've dreamt about? Okay, even more. Well, I want to put your mind at ease, because I've had the opportunity now to work with over 200 companies across 26 countries of Europe, and irrespective of region, of industry, almost of stage of development, almost every single founder feels the exact same way. So you're not alone. And the reason I emphasize that is because oftentimes when you're building a business, you sort of feel like you're running uphill, and everybody's trying to pull you back. And nowhere is that more apparent than in selling. And what I've realized is that a lot of the companies and a lot of the founders that I work with are not necessarily afraid of sales or avoiding sales. They just don't have the necessary skills and process they can follow to be successful at it. And that's what really motivated me to start working with founders to help them understand not just the technical elements of sales, so the strategies and the tactics, but also the proper mindset that you have to use in order to be successful in sales. And so what I want to really bring to light in this short presentation is a little bit of the thinking that you need to adopt and how that will ultimately lead to being successful in sales. In that vein, I want to talk about kind of three things. First, what are some common founder-led sales mistakes, okay, specifically that I've experienced in working with founders? Second, what steps can you take to avoid these and even solve for them in the future? And I do want to take a few moments to talk about how some of these ideas come to life in my book and how you might benefit from getting access to it. Before I get into that, though, I do want to do a proper introduction. So my name is Zoltan Vardy. I'm an expert in B2B sales. I'm also founder of a business and a system called the Launch Code, which is basically a blueprint that teaches founders how to sell and market high-ticket products and services to mostly enterprise, but sort of mid-market to enterprise customers. I personally, over the course of my 30-year career, have closed over $2 billion of B2B deals. 20 years of that was in the corporate world, where I was in various senior sales and executive roles in the media industry, but also as an entrepreneur myself with a successful exit back in the dot-com era, and also as an investor in several successful scale-ups in marketing technology logistics space. But enough about me. Let's talk about you and your sort of behavior and your thinking about sales as a founder. So one of the most typical mistakes that I've found is companies creating products without really having a clear understanding of what problem they solve. We heard earlier in Tomasz's presentation how the best customers are the ones that have an immediate need or immediate product, and that's absolutely 100% true. Nobody is going to take action to buy your solution until they first are aware of the problem they have. And so one of the examples I bring in the book is a company called Banners, which actually is a typical example, right? So they had developed, as technologists, a streaming technology. And they had used this streaming technology first to stream live home fitness lessons during the pandemic. Remember when we used to do that during COVID, right? Do things in front of the computer at home. Then that didn't really work, and they transitioned into live shopping. They then transitioned into using this technology to power interactive advertising, and now they're actually working on supporting companies in the sports broadcasting space. And as I worked with this company and the founders, it became very clear that they had created a technology, but they didn't really understand the problem they were solving. And so a lot of the examples and the journey that I talk about in the book is how they actually discovered that, in fact, the problem they wanted to solve is related to the fragmentation of interaction and of an audience in the sports broadcasting. And since they've made that pivot and really have made that at the center of their business, they've started to scale very quickly. This leads into the second typical problem that a lot of founders make, is generally a lack of focus. Okay? And by focus, I mean not niching down to a very clear understanding of who you serve and how you will reach that particular type of customer. A good example I talk about in the book is a company called Vicket out of Romania. Again, coincidentally, a streaming platform, but they were basically streaming broadcasts of city council meetings, sports teams, creative events, rock concerts, anything you can imagine. And in the words of the founder, nobody knew what the hell we actually did. And so in working with them, we really niched down to, again, the sports sector, where they realized that their technology would be a great tool for sports coaches to be able to identify and track the performance of their players and their teams. And there's a story in the book about how this was presented to the clients at a particular meeting. And at that moment, with that clear value proposition, they literally bought the solution on the spot at a premium price. And from that point on, this company has scaled from only 2 customers to several dozen in the space of about 18 months. The third typical mistake that founders make is they don't have a very structured sales process. Generally, I find there are 2 approaches to selling. The first is the I know a guy strategy. Is this familiar to anybody? Right? I know somebody at this company, I'm sure they're going to do business with us. Or my uncle used to work with somebody in this company, and I'm sure that they're going to want our solution. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah? Okay. The other strategy is the spray and pray strategy. Right? That's very popular these days, especially in the AI-driven world. You send out 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 messages, and then pray that somebody's going to respond. Who's done that? Okay, so these are typical approaches to founder-led sales. Neither of them are particularly effective, although network-based can be effective at the beginning of a process, but they're certainly not scalable. And that, I think, is effectively what you need to avoid. And then the question becomes, okay, what do we do differently? How do we approach the sales process differently? And that's what I talk about in the book, and specifically what I teach in my work with founders, is to really do 3 things, and do these very, very well. The first is to focus your offer and message so prospects understand why they should buy what you're selling. Okay? It sounds super simple, but actually it's really hard. Because what you need to do is you need to simplify to such a level that an intelligent 12-year-old will understand why they should buy what you're selling. Okay? And instead of spending months and months trying to make something super, super pretty and super complex and really selling technology and the feature set, everything, just simply understanding what problem you solve, who you solve it for, and why you solve it better than the competition, and being able to articulate that in a very clear way. And you do that through your value proposition, your product offering, and what I call your messaging and the tools that you use to translate your message. So that's kind of the first pillar of the launch code. The second is structure your client acquisition so you close more deals with less effort. Okay? This starts with really understanding your ICP, right? Who is your ideal customer profile? Every single one of the products or services you are out there building will have one type of customer who will look at that and say, this is the perfect solution to my problem, not one of many different solutions to my problem. That is your ICP. And once you've identified that, then you focus on 3 different channels. Outbound sales, where you are actually making the initiative to target potential customers. Partnerships, when you're working through third parties, tapping into their credibility, their network, to leverage your ability to sell. And third, generating inbound interest through marketing, through events like this, through digital marketing, and using that as a way to attract your ideal customer to you. And so we go through each of those different channels. It is very likely that one of those 3 channels will be your ideal channel. Remember, focus? What you should be doing is trying to figure out which of those 3 is going to be your perfect channel for acquiring customers. And finally, the third is to scale your operations to a level where you as founders can focus on strategy and you can empower a team that you build to then scale your sales operations. Right? This is often a very tough thing to do, right? You as a founder are very vested in your business. In fact, at the beginning, the passion that you have for your business is probably going to be a big player in being able to sell what you're selling, okay? But unfortunately, you can't do that forever, right? So how do you create the goals? How do you create the performance tracking systems? How do you actually define the roles you need to fill either on a long-term or short-term basis, either with part-time people or full-time people, so that you can ultimately scale your operations to be successful? And this is what the system, the launch code, is all about and what I talk about in the book. So to that point, okay, let's try that again. All right, wrong way. What I want to highlight in this final 2 minutes is just to say, what are you going to get with this book if it's something that you choose to buy and purchase? The first is you're going to get a very clear understanding of this system that I just created, right? It'll talk through the 3 pillars: focus, structure, and scale. Each of them is built into 3 modules. Each of those are brought to life through specific templates and actionable strategies that you can apply immediately to your business. The second is you will see a lot of examples and case studies from among the 200-odd companies I've worked with that brings these templates and these things to life. And one of the great stories in the book that I actually want to highlight, because it actually happened here at Podim, that's a great testament to what happens when you put these principles to life and bring it to use. I worked with a company called CampMap. I don't know if you've ever heard of CampMap. It's actually a Croatia-based company run by a guy named Simon Neal. Basically CampMap, for those of you who don't know, is a SaaS solution that creates maps for campgrounds and makes them kind of more accessible to people who go to these campgrounds, right? And so Simon and I had met, and we started chatting. Actually, we met here at Podim. He did the Launch Code program, which is supported with some mentoring, and he had actually had some difficult times. So he actually got to the point we had only 3 months of runway left. And he actually put this whole system to work. He actually made every single person in his team a salesperson, from the programmers to the finance people, everything. And he applied the system, and they basically went from 3 months of runway to closing about 50% of their leads that they generated, going from a few customers to over 40 customers, and actually expanding from just Croatia to 11 markets. In fact, Simon can't make it here today because he's in the US, because they've launched in the US now, and they're building their business there. And the reason this is such a great story is because I had been in touch with them. You know, as you do, you kind of lose track. And I came here in the spring of 23, and I saw Simon out there at the terrace having a drink. And I went up to him, as you do, and you say, "Hey, Simon, how are things going?" And he looked at me and said, "Zoltan, you literally saved my business," which of course felt great, but I thought that would be a great story for a book. So that story is in the book, and it's something that brings to life the balance and the impact that this can have. One thing I always like to emphasize is this book is for entrepreneurs, not hustlers. Okay, what does that mean? This is not about get rich quick. This is not about overnight success. This is not about, here are the 3 steps that's going to make you a millionaire and you'll be posing on Instagram with your orange Lamborghini by Friday. It's not. Okay? This is what it takes to build a successful, long-term, sustainable business. So for those of you who are committed to doing that and doing that in a structured, focused way, I think you'll get a lot of value out of this system. I think you'll get a lot of value out of this book, and I would encourage you to check it out. To that point, the book's been around for about 2 months. It's got 50+ 5-star reviews on Amazon. Here's just an example of some of the things that people have said about it. It is a very much a no BS type of approach, and there's a lot of examples and sort of coaching style things that you'll find in there. So hopefully you'll get value from that as well. I'm actually going to be doing the book signing in 5 minutes. Okay, so for those of you who are interested, it's down the stairs on the way towards the networking terrace. You'll see a big stand there. I'll be there, happy to sign the book and dedicate it to you. Maybe say something memorable and funny if I can. And for those of you who prefer to try before you buy, just scan this QR code and you can sign up to receive the first chapter of the book for free. And after that, you'll have an opportunity to make the purchase as well. Okay? So with that, I want to thank you for your attention.